The average person has not seen evil face to face. And when you tell people the cartels and other people harvest organs from children and people, they think you're telling stories to scare people. No, I'm softening it down so that you can even process it somewhat. And even then, they don't believe you. I've always said that there has to be an equal and opposite in this world. So as good as people can be, there's the equal and opposite on the other end, that people can be extremely evil. And man, you're walking amongst monsters every day sometimes, and you need men and women that will put on the badge and go find those monsters and confront them and take them and remove them from society.
I'm Steve Murphy, DEA Special Agent retired and now host of the Game of Crimes podcast. If you've seen the Netflix series Narcos, then you know my story. I now bring you stories of heroism and bravery from our law enforcement and military heroes, and occasionally from the criminals that they faced. Welcome to Game of Crimes. Yep, you came back to the right place. Today is part 2 of this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. We've got Mark Lamb here, retired Arizona sheriff from Pinal County, who is now currently running for U.S. Congress. We're going to get into that a little bit later in today's episode. But as we left this yesterday, he had just been elected sheriff for Pinal County, Arizona. And this is after working 6 years with a local police department that basically was over in a Native American reservation. He then joined the sheriff's department in Pinal County, worked there for several years, and then realized, you know what, I'd like to be sheriff. He told us yesterday how he had to leave the sheriff's department to do that, to afford it, because he'd taken a cut and pay to be a deputy to start with. So my question to you listeners is, would you be willing to take that kind of risk? He's got, I think you said 5 children at home, Mark. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So a wife and 5 kids. Would you be willing to take that risk, give up your pay, your biweekly paycheck or weekly paycheck, or whatever it is, to take a chance on an elected position? That takes some stones to do that. I'm not sure that he did that, but he did, and then he wins. So this was 2017, right, Mark?
Yeah, 2017, and then you're the dog that caught the car. It is becoming the sheriff all of a sudden. Now you got 600 employees. You got a budget of $70 million, and all of a sudden it's so weird because overnight. It's not like you gradually work this way. Overnight, they just hand you these keys and they're like, and I have a key to every door in the building and I can go in and out of the jail as I please. And I can get anywhere I want. And that's a weird feeling. And all of a sudden you realize, wait a second, we're the people that have to make the final decision here. And it just starts like, I mean, we had some big cases right away, and we had, you're dealing now when you win in politics. One thing is when you're running, when you win, then your target on your back becomes even more. The crazies come out the woodwork and you're dealing with all that piece of it. But man, it was for first 6 months, we were drinking out of a fire hose, trying to get the budget under control. When we came in, they told us, hey, you're going to be a few $1 million over budget. And so we had to start fixing that. But the budget was just such a mess that we couldn't even really make heads or tails of it. And so luckily we were working with the county, and within about a year to 2 years, we got the budget under, because the first year we kind of got an idea. So then the second year, you got to figure out if your idea is right. And then we were pretty close, and then we just fine-tuned a few things. And after that, we stayed under budget every year after that. But my guys, when I became sheriff, hadn't had raises in 11 years. And so since then, my guys have been multiple raises. Every year they get a pay increase. These were things that weren't happening with the previous guys. And they did a lot of things great, but one of those things that they weren't able to get done for the guys was a raise. And so we've gotten our guys raises. As a matter of fact, just before I left, we got our guys 20% raise. I mean, a lot of them were making a 20% raise. So a lot of them were making like $13,000 to $15,000 more per year. That last
Wow.
year I was there last year. So it was a lot of work to do. Then you have all this community stuff you got to go to. And I had a real vision. I needed to be able to make sure that we could hire and compete with other agencies, even though we were not one of the highest paid agencies. So what I did was I used social media. I leveraged it because that was my only thing that I could do. I realized a lot of police weren't. They weren't taking advantage of it. And I thought they were missing a golden opportunity. And so I came in there and really started to use the media and the social media to really get our name out there for the agency. Live PD was one of them. You know, we had a chance to be on Live PD. And we took that opportunity. Not initially. Initially, they came to me right when I won. And I said, oh, man, I'm like a baby deer on ice right now. I don't even, my lambs all over the place. And about 6 months into it, I told my chief, I go, hey, call Live PD. I was in Colorado for a sheriff's training. I called my chief and I said, hey, call Live PD back and see if they're interested in doing Live PD. That was on a Monday. By Friday, before I'd even got back from Colorado, they were already riding with us. That's how quickly that happened. And
Wow.
and we had Live PD for a while. I mean, it took me a while before I started riding with them. Actually, the way they got with me was I responded to a call. It was like a domestic call, and I'm in there. It's like the very end of the show. And right at the end of the show, I'm there, and you see me in the doorway, and the guy's fighting with the deputies, and I take a step in the doorway, and I reach up the stairs, and I grab this guy, and I drag him down the stairs and out the front door, out into the yard. And all the people at the very end of the show were like, who's the guy in the cowboy hat dragging that guy out of the front yard? And after that, they started riding with me. And at the same time, we were doing a show called 60 Days In, because I also wanted to showcase the jail, which was nerve-wracking, but it actually, now people know me more for that than they do for Live PD, because it came out on Netflix during COVID, and so tons of people watched 60 Days In. But those are the things that we did to put ourselves apart, because I didn't pay as much. I was on the outskirts of the Phoenix Valley. And so how am I going to compete with all these other agencies? And the way we did it is we showcased the agency that we worked in by saying, you want to be a cop? Come here. And that got us lateral hires, and it got us new hires. And that's how we were able to compete.
Yeah, and if I understand it correctly, Pinal County is between Phoenix and Tucson. Is that right?
Yep. Yep. So we were dealing with Tucson on the bottom end of our county and Phoenix on the top end.
So this is not just some rural county where you got, 11 deputies to patrol the whole county. This is a highly populated area, right?
Well, we're the third largest county in the state of Arizona. We had 500,000 population, of which the sheriff's office was responsible for the law enforcement services for over half of it. We had a community called Santan Valley, which is where I live, and it was 130,000 people, and we patrolled it as the sheriff's office. It would have been the 10th largest city in the state of Arizona if they were incorporated. And so we would patrol that with 5 deputies for 130,000 people. And there was a lot of work. There was a lot of work, and it wasn't 11 deputies. I had 230 sworn at the time. I think we're about 250 now. We had 170, 180 in the jail. I had 600 employees total. So there's a lot of moving pieces to it. And I had 8 police departments in the county that we had to work with. So yeah, big job.
We talked yesterday before we started recording a little bit, and a couple names came up, Tom Rizzo and Sean Sticks Larkin. You had the opportunity to work with them, right?
Yeah, Tom, not as much, but Tom's a great guy. But really, Sticks, I love that guy. He's a good guy, and he's done really well. I've been so thrilled to see just the success that he's had. And I think he's been such a good voice for law enforcement. And now Tom Rizzo's coming in there. I worked a lot with Tom Morris, And we actually did a spin-off show where we were in the top 10 on the spin-off show called Live PD Wanted, which was kind of like Live PD meets America's Most Wanted. Boom, that's the show. And we did 20 episodes, which we were typically into the top 10, sometimes top 5 on viewers on cable TV, and then COVID. And that killed it. So
yeah. It's amazing how these shows from cops all the way to the one you just mentioned there, Live PD Wanted, are so successful on the air. It just shows you that people are interested in law enforcement and what goes on out there. So when you hear things about defund the police, that's just one of the most ridiculous movements I've ever heard in my life. And if you go talk to the people who live in the crime areas, the honest people, not everybody in a crime-ridden area is dishonest. They're not all criminals. You ask them if they want to defund the police. It's just outrageous. It's ridiculous. Whoever came up with that. It's stupid.
Well, for decades, socialism has been pushing and communism has patiently and systematically pushed its way into American society. And what you see, that is a socialist tactic. And what it is in an effort to federalize so where you can then take control. And so I know people think, oh, this guy's crazy. No. Go and read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, any other books. And because it doesn't make sense to say that we need to defund the police. But if you want to destabilize and if you want to make government the answer to all your problems, and if you want to do all that, that's what socialism and communism strives for. And the way to do that is by creating destabilization. And you do it in destabilizing communities with riots and all these people protesting and obstructing and all of these things, and then saying that the police need to be defunded. It's ludicrous. I won't be surprised if you start to see some of that narrative pop back up again, because it's an asinine concept, and you're right. Most people don't support it, but the media and the people that have the megaphone want to make you think that they do. So,
right, and that's quite honestly, that's one of the reasons I have Game of Crimes here out on the podcast channel, is so that the listeners can hear what really goes on out there. If everybody was against the cops, I wouldn't have an audience and I wouldn't be here talking to you today. It's just ridiculous what's going on. But before I forget, I just want to mention that Sean Larkin was a guest here on Game of Crimes in episode 126, and that was back in December 2023. And Tom Rizzo, we had him on here, episode 199 in August of last year, 25. So if you don't know who these people are, shame on you, because you should know. 2 law enforcement professionals. Tom's still on the job doing the right thing. I kind of lost touch with Sticks. I'm not sure what he's doing now, but he was in the media there quite a bit. But 2 American heroes.
Yeah, they really are. And he's back to doing something on Reels as well, doing some live PD stuff. And you talk about how people are interested in this. I started a YouTube channel called @RealAmericanSheriff, so please go subscribe, help out. But all I do is break down body cameras, which is kind of in essence what live PD is doing as well. And I give kind of a little background as to what they're doing, why they're saying, what the police, why the protocol. And people, man, they just love to see that. They want to hear that inside scoop on it. And I know we were going to talk about it later, but I'm going to, by the time people are seeing this, we'll have launched our true crime channel on Lamb Investigations. And we're going to hopefully entertain some people with some true crime out there across this country. Eventually, I'll have a Patreon account where I'm going to dive even deeper into the true crime cases. I'm going to do shorter versions, the versions that YouTube will allow. But on the Patreon, I hope to actually show you the case files, the evidence files, the stuff that you can't really show on YouTube.
Wow. That's fantastic. And that's on, you mentioned YouTube. And
yeah, YouTube, it'll be @Lamb Investigations. And we're going to just try to break down have fun, do some crimes all across this. I mean, there's some crazy crimes out there that people don't know about. And we're going to break down some of this true crime. Here's the thing about true crime is Body cam, you tend to get predominantly probably men really viewing that. Some women. You get into true crime, and it's all across the board, and probably even more women listen to true crime as well. And so I'm trying to create some content that's interesting, that's pro law enforcement, that really pushes and builds our agency. I want people to want to go into this profession. And so I'm trying to do things that really build that up. But at the same time, people hear and get to see some of the things that you and I have dealt with in our careers that are just bonkers. If I were to tell somebody at a dinner party, they'd be like, there's no way that's true.
It is. And some of the crimes out there are hilarious, but then some are so heinous that, I mean, if especially when it comes to human trafficking, that's.
We just caught one. We just had one yesterday in our county. It started in Cochise County, where they had gotten intel that a lady had taken an 8-year-old child, and then they took her car for some reason. Well, anyway, she was in a hotel in Pinal County, and they busted in there, found her in the hotel. And she had this little 8-year-old boy. She had her daughter, but then she had a little 8-year-old boy that she was trafficking for the cartels. And luckily, we saved that 8-year-old boy yesterday. But I think that people would shudder to know the amount of children that were trafficked in, are being trafficked in, and that continue to be trafficked, that are already in the United States. That the amount of women and children that are being trafficked for sex and for hard labor is mind blowing, and it's so sad. And it's one of the reasons why I fight so hard to secure our borders, because I've seen that firsthand. And that's the main source of these children coming into our country. The cartel understands they can sell you a pill one time. If you take it, it's done. But they can sell you a woman or a child hundreds of times, over and over and over again. And they have zero regard for human life. So when they're done with you, they'll cast you aside like an old pair of shoes or like a piece of trash. And then they'll fill it back up with another child or another woman.
It is. You probably already know this, Mark, but January was Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And I did this last year. I did it again this year, just a couple of weeks ago, where I brought in Tyler Schwab, who is the creator of Libertas International, based out of Medellin, Colombia. He's a good Mormon kid out of Wyoming that did this as a young man. He's in his 11th or 12th year right now. He's facing so many death threats, he can't go back to Colombia. I brought in Chad Melly, who's with protectall.org as their website, who is over in Malaysia fighting. He started fighting human trafficking, especially child exploitation, when he was a cop in Arkansas. Got really good at cybercrime, and now he works as an NGO saving children all around the world. It's just amazing. And then I've gotten involved with another group called Aerial Recovery out of Nashville, Tennessee, who not only works to save people from human trafficking, but they also provide support for military and law enforcement or first responders suffering from PTSD. So why am I taking the time to mention that? Because you folks that listen to me regularly, that's one of the hot buttons here on Game of Crimes is we've got to do more about human trafficking. You mentioned the numbers, Mark. Currently, approximately 49.6 million victims are involved in human trafficking now, and approximately a quarter, 25% of those are children. Mm-hmm. It's unconscionable. It's hard to talk about, but we've got to get more awareness out there, because people think they thought fentanyl will never affect me. Well, I mean, look a little closer. If it's not in your immediate family, start branching out to your other parts of your family and your close friends. I'm pretty sure you're going to find that it does affect you. And again, a tangent there, but
look, the evil in this world is the average person has not seen evil face to face. And you're probably the same way. I can't even tell people because they wouldn't believe it. They think when you tell people the cartels and other people harvest organs from children and people, they think you're just telling you're telling stories to scare people. No, I'm softening it down so that you can even process it somewhat. And even then they don't believe you. Look, I've always said that there has to be an equal and opposite in this world. So as good as people can be, there's the equal and opposite on the other end, that people can be extremely evil. And man, you're walking amongst monsters every day sometimes, and you need men and women that will put on the badge and go find those monsters and confront them and take them and remove them from society, because they are the evil that exists in this world. And to the thought that you would abuse a child in any way, shape, or form, the scriptures say it's better that you have a millstone tied around your neck and thrust into the sea than to abuse a child of our Heavenly Father. And so thank God for all the people that are out there trying to save children. And there's children right now praying that somebody will kick in their door and save them from the monsters that have them right now.
Absolutely. And for you, those of you who support law enforcement, make it vocal. You take a stand on what you believe, but take that stand. Don't be afraid to speak up and tell people, because there's people out there telling you what they think. So law enforcement needs all the support it can get.
I'm going to touch a political issue, because right now you have all these people trying to defend the people that came into this country illegally, assuming that every one of them is good. And what they're doing is they're continuing to provide a shield for those people who are trafficking humans, who are trafficking children. They're keeping our federal law enforcement from finding the children that are actually being out there trafficked by these monsters. And when you get in the way, that's what you're doing. If you don't like the policies, go protest them at the office of your congressmen and senators, because they're the ones that pass the laws that our federal officers are actually enforcing. Don't go fight against the men and women who are putting on the badge. But it goes to show you that it's not that. It's that there are paid agitators. There are people that are trying to create chaos and instability so that they can achieve a political mission. And it's shameful, because women and children and even men are the pawns in this game of theirs.
Very good point. And if you look at the title, it's right there in the title: law enforcement, not lawmaker. That's what legislators do. The law enforcement professionals out there are just enforcing the law. They don't have a choice. They're just doing their job. So,
hey, look, we think some of those laws are stupid too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to back up there. You mentioned 60 days in. Tell us a little bit more about that. What was your objective with that, and how successful was it?
So we were season 5 of 60 Days In. Great crew that put it together. Greg Henry, friend of ours, he came to us and said, hey, I want to do this thing in your jail. And I knew it. I'd already watched the show. So when he came to me, I was familiar with it. He goes, look, we're going to put regular people in your jail. And man, my chiefs were like, whoa, no. And I said, no, we're going to do it. We're going to figure out how to do it. And so we had, I think, 6 or 8 regular people in our jail. Nobody knew they were in there. About 5 of us in the agency knew they were in there. So the employees don't know they're in there. The other inmates don't know. Now you might say, well, why do they get away with the camera? Well, first of all, there's cameras everywhere in there anyway. And what we said is, hey, look, we're filming a documentary about border jails, about jails dealing with border stuff. And quickly, look, prisoners, when you put them in there and they'll say, I don't want that camera in here. 2 hours later, they'll be snorting, crushed up pills off the thing right in front of the camera. That's how they are. So, but everybody had to sign a release just saying that they were going to be on camera. But they didn't know what the show was about. Neither did the employees. And one of the things I said, we will not do a gotcha on my employees. We're not going to do a gotcha. This will be about, I want to know about drugs, I want to know about gangs, and I want to know about our programs, whether they were working in the facility. And so that was the objective for doing the show. And we were filming live PD. I would go film with live PD. I'd film 60 Days in the day, and then I'd go film live PD at night. And I'll tell you what, people can say what they want about me, because there's always critics. But like Aristotle says, the only way to avoid criticism is to do nothing, say nothing, or be nothing. And so you're going to have those critics out there. But this allowed us to hire not just on the road, but we needed people to work the jail. And this gave us the ability to put our thing on the map. It came out on A&E in 2019. Well, then in 2020, COVID hit. And I remember halfway through 2020, somebody said to me, they're like, "Oh, I just watched your show on Netflix." And I was like, "Nah, Netflix? I haven't done any shows on Netflix." And I go, "Was it Vice?" And they said, "No, some jail show." So I go home and I look on Netflix, and sure enough, number one show on Netflix, 60 Days In. And so everybody was home on quarantine watching 60 Days In. And so now people see me and they're like, "Are you that dude from that?" I mean, you can run into guys with tattoos all over, gangsters. They'll be like, "Man, you're the guy from 60 Days In, man. I love that show."
That's excellent. You see all the shows out there that show what cops do on the street. That's corrections is a part of law enforcement. So it's kind of cool that the viewers are getting an inside look at what really goes on inside of a jail.
Yeah. That's what we did. And it was good. We learned some things, nothing earth shattering, but we learned that complacency, we have always said in this profession that complacency kills. And humans have a natural tendency to create patterns. Inmates, all they do is watch all day long, and they watch for the patterns that our guys were making. They were not mental errors. They were just, you get into a groove and you've got to figure out a way to get yourself out of the groove. And I think this show got us out of the groove for a while. And so we had success in finding drugs and different things, but it started because we were willing to take a chance and look at it. And we knew we were putting ourselves out there, but it worked out to be a very fruitful project for us.
Excellent. So now your second term as sheriff, you ran unopposed in that one, right?
I had somebody in the beginning, but they didn't make it through the process. And so by the time we have in Arizona, the way you do it is you say you're going to run and then you have to get signatures. They didn't have enough signatures to get on the ballot. And so then I technically ran unopposed because you're not a real candidate until you actually get on the ballot by turning in your signature. So I ran unopposed, which there's a saying, there's only two ways to run for office, scared or unopposed. And I was running scared and then unopposed.
Wow, that's a lot of responsibility. And I know your phone's ringing off the hook day and night as the sheriff of the county.
Yeah, it was. Somebody asked me at a training one time, they're like, "What keeps you up at night?" And I said, "Absolutely nothing." I said, "Yes, I worry about my guys every night. I pray for them before I go to bed, and I worry about them being out there on the streets, and I pray that they go home safely to their families." But I wasn't worried because I had good leadership in place. If you're worried as a leader, you got the wrong people in place. You shouldn't have to worry. You should be able to empower your leadership underneath you to handle whatever it is. In the 8 years I was sheriff, there was only a few times that I actually got up and left my house and went out to a scene. And most of them involved my deputies being in a shooting or losing somebody or something. Fortunately, I never lost a deputy, but we had a couple of incidences where other police officers from other agencies involved in our thing were killed. And so I would go do the media stuff. I always thought it was very important that the leader be the face of the agency and that you be the one delivering tough messages and that you be the one that's actually out answering the questions. And so I took that serious. But fortunately, the actual investigations, for the most part, were done, and we empowered our people to do it. And so I slept good at night knowing that I had great people out there.
Excellent. In late 24, you decided to retire. What precipitated that, and what happened next?
So I didn't decide to retire. I decided to run for the U.S. Senate in Arizona. And the reason why is there's an old Danish saying that he who has the ability has the responsibility. And the border was the number one issue leading up to that previous election. And I would say, look, I can keep the wolves from my herd for a long time. But if somebody doesn't go hunt those wolves, they will multiply and replenish. And eventually even the best of shepherds and sheepdogs can't keep the wolves out. And so somebody had to go hunt those wolves, and those wolves were in D.C. The policies in Washington, D.C. were what were creating the drug problems in this country, and they were creating the trafficking problems in this country. And so I couldn't just stand by. You are cut from the same cloth that I am. It is not in my nature to stand on the corner and watch a building burn. or wait for somebody else to run in the building as opposed to me doing it, especially when I'm fully capable and I have the ability to do it. So I made a decision to run for the U.S. Senate. Because I did that, you cannot run for two offices at once in Arizona. So I had to make a decision. Was I going to continue to run for Senate, or would I run for sheriff? But I couldn't do both. So I chose to continue to run for Senate. And I knew that I would have to retire on December 31st of 2024. And that would be the end. And so I knew I would have to retire, win or lose. But the reason is because I ran for the U.S. Senate, or else I'd probably still be the sheriff.
How did that election turn out?
Well, I lost in the primary. I thought we ran a good election. I don't believe in politics by tearing somebody else down. I also believe in Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, thou shalt not speak ill of fellow Republicans. And Democrats understand that very well. They're lockstep. Like, they pick a candidate and they go with it. It could be the worst idea in the world and they all get behind it. Republicans tend to be more principally driven as opposed to politically driven. And so then you get some differences. But in the end, I couldn't win in I didn't win in the primary, which was a godsend. I look back now, and one of the things I've learned through life as a sheriff and challenging life is God in life is trying to give you it's trying to give you what you want. But we continue to try to manipulate the outcome, as opposed to just being so confident in the plan. And so while I'm a competitor, I don't like to lose. So I woke up the next morning and I was a little ticked off and a little stung. And I was getting these messages, and the messages were like, hey, I'm sorry you lost. They were oddly reminiscent of a few years before that, where my kids had been killed by a drunk driver. My son and my daughter, my granddaughter, my 11-month-old granddaughter, my daughter-in-law were killed by somebody driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol. And so when I was getting these messages, they were reminding my wife and I of losing my children. And so I said to her, I'm going to put the phone down. Let's go to breakfast and forget about this. On the way there, I called one of my fellow sheriffs who had just retired, and we talked. And I'll tell you, by the end of that conversation, by 10 o'clock in the morning, I was ready to go into the private sector and start making some money. And I got over the loss real fast. And I haven't really looked back. There's a show called Vikings. If you haven't watched it, it's really good. But in there, Ragnar is the leader of it. And they go out and they do their Viking thing. They plunder and they do all that. And he's got these boys, and his boys are twins. And they're actually now finally at an age where they can now go out and do this with them. Young boys, still probably 8, 10 years old. And as they're in the boat and they're leaving the shore, the boys are on the back of the boat looking back towards the shore. And Ragnar is looking forward. And Ragnar, without even turning around, he says, don't waste your time looking back. We're not going that direction. And so I really love that saying, is too many people look back as if you can change the past for good or bad, but you can't. And we're not going that direction. So you take what you can, you learn from it, and you move forward. And we learned a lot from the Senate race, and I see God's hand in a lot of different things. It gave me the opportunity to go into the private sector and change the financial future of my family and really get into some different things. And so what I learned was that everything works out for a reason. And we learned when we lost our kids, you have to be willing to surrender the outcome in life. You can only control your attitude and your work output. Everything else, that's outside of your control. And the more you fight against it, the more angry you'll feel, the more anxiety you will feel, unhappiness you will feel. When you let go and realize everything's working out for you, you just have to be patient and see what God's plan is.
Man, I didn't realize that about your children. I'm very, very sorry to hear that. Our second son passed away in February of 25, and it's hard to get over. We all believe that we should outlive our children, and just so sympathies to your family. But I know you guys have moved on as we are.
And I'm sorry for your loss too. It's unnatural. It's unnatural to lose a child, especially a grandchild. And, in the end, what we say is we were grateful for the time we had with them.
Right.
Nobody gets out of this life alive. And we were grateful for the time we had with them. And I'm so sorry to hear about your son as well.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it, brother. So now you're in private business, but you just can't sit still, because now what are you doing?
What I can is walk away from the arena. And once again, I think our country needs real patriots. I think our country needs American-minded, America first, Americans first, men and women who are common sense, who have the ability to hit the ground running, who can go to Washington, D.C. and actually hopefully make change in here. People will say he's not going to be able to change anything. Maybe not. But I always say, how many people stood in front of the tanks in Tiananmen Square? One guy. And it changed the trajectory of everything. And so you just have to have somebody that's willing to go do it. And I'm looking forward to getting in there and being a representative. I didn't have this in my plans. I thought I was going to be in the private sector for a few years. But I just see the need for real common sense Americans, people that understand it, that understand the need to fix the border and immigration long term, somebody that's not afraid to fight against the drugs that are being brought in this country. And so we need warriors. And so I'm back in the arena. I'm running for Congress. Our congressman is a great congressman, but he's running for governor. So this seat is open. And it's a third of it is the county I was the sheriff in. And I joked that the other 2/3 wish they were in my county for the last few years. But it's a great place for me. And I'm looking forward to getting into Washington, D.C. and trying to bring some common sense and put the American people first for a change.
Well, and I tell you what, if I was in Arizona, I'd vote for you.
Well, I appreciate it. I'll tell people I am an authentic, unapologetic defender of God, family, freedom, and the Constitution. And that's what I hope to bring to Washington, D.C.
All good platforms. I mean, that's, wow. You just hit a home run there. As far as the immigration goes, it's, and not to go too far into politics here, but and I don't know if you know this about me, but our daughters are Colombian by birth. We adopted them when we lived in South America. I was just a worker bee back then, nothing special. We went through the legal process. They are now naturalized U.S. citizens, have been since they were toddlers. And I'm thinking, if I can do it, if my wife and I, Connie and I can do it, anybody can do it. You just got to go through the process. I know that sounds very simplistic. And I know that there are a lot of people that, especially some of the human trafficking victims who were under death threats because they were rescued. They now live here in the United States for the right reasons, but they went through the legal process. They just didn't come and sneak across the border. So I don't think it's outrageous to have the laws on the books and then expect people to follow our law. If you're not going to follow our law, stay where you are.
Yeah. One of the questions I get a lot, Steve, is people say, you're a God-fearing man. How do you partition out, like, there's good people trying to come here to this country? And I said, you know how I have no problem talking about a secure border and enforcing it. And I do it in a compassionate way. Like, we're not out hurting anybody. We treat everybody with kindness and respect. Nobody goes into cuffs when we catch them. We turn them over to Border Patrol. Border Patrol doesn't put them in cuffs. They take them down there unless they're committing a crime. But the crime is they're coming to this country illegally. And so I tell people all the time, I said, you know how I can delineate this is because we have a legal process. If you're a good person, then you should be striving to do it the legal way and be patient. Good things come to those who are patient and who wait. And yes, it takes time. And yes, it needs to be fixed. I will tell you that portion of it needs to be fixed as well. It can't be as difficult as it is sometimes. But what we've got to do is we have to have order. And when you don't have order, what comes with it are the drugs and the human trafficking and the abuse of human beings because you wanted to let people come in here illegally. And that's what breaks the system. And so I'm not okay with it. And the reason I can be okay with enforcing border security is because we have a legal way for all those good people who really want to come here and be part of the American way. What we're getting right now are people that really don't love America. We've allowed so many people that are terrorists, that hate America. Their belief system is incompatible with America. And we now have to deal with it And if you want an example of how that looks on a much smaller level, go look at France, Spain, Germany, England. They're done. They don't have enough. Those will be Muslim countries in a few years. They already pretty much are, and they don't have the actual natural birthright of those people who are from those countries. They don't have the birthright to sustain it. And we're doing the same thing here.
And if you look at some of those countries you just mentioned there, they are now changing their laws to address the situation. And you just hope that it's not too late for them to get back control. Because they had their values. People, again, I say I don't want to be political, but I know I am right now. But
it's hard not to when you talk about immigration, and it is a political issue, and so it's hard not to be political. I mean, we're not pointing fingers necessarily at anybody, but I could, I could definitely.
Yeah, and people like to argue that this is a country of immigrants. Of course it is. My grandmother on my mom's side immigrated from England.
We are a country of settlers. That's what we are. This country was not built by immigrants. It was built by settlers. Immigrants come when a country is already built. So yes, we do have immigrants in here, but make no mistake, this country was built by settlers, people who had the guts to go and deal with the rugged landscape of America and be able to settle and create a country that other people wanted to come to. So while immigrants comprise a very important part of our country, especially for decades, this country was built not by immigrants, it was built by settlers, people who came here and braved it and roughed it and worked hard and created a society that everybody wants a part of.
Good explanation. But then as you look, as immigrants did start coming into our country, they didn't just show up, they went through the legal process. So yes, we are a nation of immigrants as it's progressed, but they did it the legal way. That's all we're asking. Just go through the legal process. Go to another country and try and do that. What would happen to you, especially Mexico? They put your butt in jail. You fly a flag in Mexico other than the Mexican flag, that's a criminal offense down there.
Yeah. And look, it's a despicable thing to do in this country. You want to come here and take advantage of what we have to offer. All we're asking for is a little respect. Right now, I looked at some of the numbers, and I'm going to try to remember. I'm pretty good with numbers, remembering it. But there was the Somali head of households in Minnesota is a perfect example. 73% of them use Medicaid. 81% of them are on some type of federal assistance, SNAP, all our federal government programs. After 10 years, that number only goes down to 78%. So that means 8 out of 10 of the Somalians that have come here are currently living off of subsidies provided by the hardworking Americans who have gone out there. They are good citizens. They pay their taxes, only to have it taken and given to other people who are not working, who are not providing, who don't love this country. They want to implement what they had in Somalia here in this country, or what they had in Africa, or wherever they came from. They want to implement that. And that's not what we need. Is if you want to come be part of America, you should be willing to be part of America and love this country and have allegiance to this country. I think it's totally unacceptable to have anybody serve in office that has dual citizenship with another country. I don't think that's okay. And I hope to pass a law, or be part of passing a law, that says you cannot serve in this country if you are a dual citizen. And frankly, I don't think it's that too much to ask to say that you should actually be born in this country. That way you have to be a first generation American to serve in here as well.
What we're doing now is not working. The definition of lunacy is continue to do the same thing over and over and expect a different outcome. So I'm all in favor of having some fresh blood in Congress, and let's take a look at things, and we got to do better than what we're doing.
Yep.
So I want to ask you too about another thing that's in the news right now, because I'm doing a lot of interviews on different news channels and podcasts about what's going on in Venezuela. People ask me about the suspected drug boats that are being blown out of the water. I'm pretty sure you know what my opinion is, and anybody that's listened to me on any of the interviews knows my opinion. What are your thoughts on that, Mark?
Totally okay with it. We've been conditioned as Americans to think that a weapon of mass destruction looks like a bomb or a plane crashing into a building or somebody walking in and shooting a gun off in a crowded building. That's what we've been conditioned to view terrorism as, or a weapon of destruction. And what we have failed to see is that the real destruction has come from fentanyl and other drugs. That has killed far more Americans, to the tune of about 75,000 to at least 75,000 for fentanyl. You add in the other drugs, you're talking well over 100,000 people dying every year from those drugs. No army has ever had success killing Americans and American citizens than the drugs have. And so you talk about a boat full of drugs, that is going to be far more dangerous than a bomb hitting our shores. But if I were to line up 100 Americans of all different parties and say, that bomb out there, that boat out there has a bomb on it, do you want me to stop it? Everybody be like, yes, stop it. Well, that boat is full of drugs that will probably kill 20, 25,000 people. And so, yeah, I'm okay with you bombing them. And that's the president's authority. And he's doing what he has to do to protect the people. Article 4, Section 4 says that the government's job is to protect us from an invasion. And so I think that in these cases, I'm okay with it. There's a lot of intel. The average American thinks, oh, they're just dropping bombs on random boats out in the ocean. No, Steve, you know, how much investigation did you guys do at the DEA to know? I mean, look, I know I've worked with the DEA. They got so much intel that they know when these boats leave, what they're full of, who's on it. And so they're not just willy-nilly bombing boats out there. So yeah, I'm for it. And I'm glad we have somebody with the stones to do it, because that's what we've needed for a long time, because politicians have not been protecting the American people.
Right. I'm with you 100%. People ask me my opinion on it. And I was with DEA for I was a cop for 38 years, the last 26 with DEA. Did my thing down in Colombia against the Medellin cartel, living and working with Colombian National Police in Medellin for 18 months, there with DevGru, with SEAL Team 6, with Army's Delta Force, studs of the world who were not allowed to go do their job, were restricted to base, not allowed to go out. Javier and I were under the same restrictions, but we made a conscious decision at the very beginning of that 18-month period. We still had to go out and do our job, and eventually we were successful. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because since Richard Nixon, we've been fighting a war on drugs. Well, we're going after the world's first narco-terrorist, the world's most wanted criminal. Believe it or not, America's Most Wanted came down and did one episode only in their all the seasons they did of the world's most wanted, and that was Pablo Escobar. And what did we send to fight that war? 2 guys. It's a joke.
It's a joke.
So when people ask me what my thoughts are, I'm saying that this is long overdue. It's one of the first things I've seen and not to take away from the other guys. We had Operation Snowcap, where our guys were under fire all the time down in Peru and Bolivia. We've had our fast teams, which operated over in Afghanistan and Central and South America. I mean, some studs out there that are actually in war-like situations, where mortar rounds are being lodged and RPGs are being fired and gun rounds and all that. But the war on drugs, I think, has almost been a joke. Now, I'm not taking away from the brave men and women that go do the job. And I'm so damn proud of what you folks do every day, that you're risking your lives. And I know your families are proud of you as well. But if we're not getting the support from our politicians in Washington who make the laws, you're a law enforcer. Yeah. So they've got to stand behind you and let you go do your job. So
look at what happens. Look at what kind of success you can have when you take the chains off the dogs. And Venezuela was a perfect example of that. The difference between Panama and Venezuela was, in Panama, we lost 23 Americans. And it lasted a month. They got Noriega, but in Venezuela, Delta, there is nobody is capable of doing what we did the other day in the world. America is the only country that can do that, where they can drop in and snatch a guy up who dared the president to come and snatch him up, and do it in a way that lost no American lives. What a success. And I think whether you are like the current political landscape or not, you got to give credit where credit is due. I happen to be a big supporter, and I thought what they did, they executed to do perfection. They took the chains off the dogs, and the dogs did exactly what they were supposed to do. And their capability. Delta and those guys are the best of the best. There's nobody in the world like them. And they proved it the other night and took the Maduro, who was a drug dealer, who was intimately intertwined with TDA, Tren de Aragua. He was involved with killing people and trafficking drugs. I mean, this guy was a turd of the first class. And so I'm glad they snatched him up.
Absolutely. Now, and ladies and gentlemen, just taking out the drug boats, don't think that's going to stop the drug problem coming here in the United States. That's just one method of transportation that they use. Audrey and I, we try to sell the idea of better education of Americans as to the dangers of the drugs, rather than taking the complicit attitude that, I just want to try this because people have been talking about it, and all of a sudden you're addicted, and now people who are working and paying taxes have to take care of your sorry butt because you knew before you tried it there was a potential for addiction and potential death, and you did it anyway. So we have 4 children, and now we have 5 grandchildren. We try to teach them about the consequences for your actions, and you have to be responsible. You have to make good decisions. So,
I couldn't agree more with you. Well said, because that's exactly right. We've gotten this place in this country where we want to act with no consequence. We want to speak with no consequence. The First Amendment doesn't say you can say what you want and have no consequences. It just says that the government can't put you in jail for it. But there are consequences to what you say. You might lose your job. You might lose friends. That's the consequences of it. I was just going to say real quick, most people don't realize cocaine is on the rise. Like cocaine, we're back to having tons of cocaine. And Maduro and those guys were part of that trafficking of the cocaine into America. And what they do is they lace the cocaine with fentanyl to increase addiction levels. And also, they really don't care. I have people all the time, and I'm sure you do too, as well, Steve, as they say, why would the cartels want to kill their clientele? First of all, they just don't care. And number 2, every day there's more Americans born than die. And so guess what? There's new clientele being born every day. It's not affecting their bottom line. And so it doesn't matter if they kill off the client or not. It's not that big of a deal for them.
Right. And you see methamphetamines making a comeback here in the United States. And just keep in mind, fentanyl is so addictive and destructive. A kilo of fentanyl is much easier to smuggle into the United States than a couple 100 kilos of cocaine. I mean, it's just so much smaller, but it's that powerful.
And do you know how many pills they can make from a kilo of cocaine? They can make anywhere, depending on how much fentanyl they put in the pill, they can make anywhere, there's estimates on the low end of 500,000 pills to 1 million plus pills with a kilo of cocaine, a kilo of fentanyl. So like that's a lot of pills you can make with 1 kilo of fentanyl.
Absolutely. We've got another episode that's going to be out here on Game of Crimes in a few weeks or maybe a month or so, is 2 former guests, Derek Maltz, who was...
Oh, I love Derek. Yeah, he's great.
He's a bashful man, isn't he?
He's great. I love him.
Yeah, I was his executive assistant for a number of years. It was a true partnership of the North meets South, believe me.
Yeah.
But so Derek's going to be on here with Aaron Graham, who is a former DEA agent, was a San Diego police officer, then a DEA agent, and then most recently worked for an international pharmaceutical company that made no narcotics, just to put that out there. I'm going to bring them on to talk about counterfeit medications because, and just very, very quickly, in a minute or less here, when the traffickers are creating these pills, just like Mark was talking about, they dump the binders that hold the pill together. That's the materials that keep it in pill form. They dump in some fentanyl with that in a cement mixer. They give it a few turns. There is no quality control to make sure that fentanyl was distributed equally throughout those binders, and then they press the pills. And so what happens is you may get a pill that you feel no reaction to. That's because there's no fentanyl or very little fentanyl, or you might get one that contained a lot of fentanyl and you pass away. One of the problems that we've talked about is they will do the same thing. They'll create counterfeit medications that look like what a person would take for cancer at home. So when that person dies from cancer, you think, well, everybody says, well, he's had cancer for 10 years or 3 years or whatever it is, so he just died of cancer. And there's no autopsy done. A murder has just been committed because that pill, that fake pill, that counterfeit pill contained fentanyl, or they had taken the active ingredient out of that pill for the cancer medication. So you talk about the perfect murder. That's what's taking place here. And so we're going to get into that conversation here.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because the numbers, when we talk about 75,000 poisonings a year, and I call them poisonings because that's what they are. Because when you talk about it, if you say a fentanyl overdose, it insinuates these people were drug addicts or they had a long problem with it. Many of these deaths come first time use. So they're fentanyl poisonings. And most people don't realize they're taking fentanyl. But I can't even tell you how many elderly people that we don't autopsy that probably died from a fentanyl poisoning as well, but you attribute it to maybe a natural death or cancer or something else. And there's a lot of people out there. I think those numbers are far higher than what we think we know as Americans, because a lot of those deaths are not investigated because it's not like a 15-year-old who dies that's not normal, but somebody in their 50s, 60s, 70s who may be still taking fentanyl that dies, you're probably not going to test them. And I think those deaths could be significantly higher.
I do too. And then you don't know that all the agencies are reporting the way they're supposed to, because they want to create their community. They want to create a safer picture of their community without talking about the violent crimes and the drug related issues that go on there. So, boy, that's some good stuff.
That went by fast.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, again, we've got to do something different, ladies and gentlemen. I don't go political, or probably did a little bit more so than I've ever done before here on the Game of Crimes, but it's the truth, and it's things that need to be addressed out here. One thing I want to recognize you for, Sheriff, is you were recognized by the Arizona Gang Investigators Association at one point because of your career, right?
Yep, that was for that RICO case we did against the East Side Los Guada Bloods. We received an award for that. I only know of 2 RICO cases. I don't know how many RICO cases have actually been done in Indian country across this country. We were one of the few. That was only the second RICO case ever done at Salt River. And so I had other people that was doing it for me, and rightfully so. They were recognized for the work that we all did to put that case together, because we did it. We had a major impact on crime in that community. And so, yeah. And then I know, not to get into the politics, but so I don't forget, I am running for Congress like we talked about. If anybody wants to go check it out, go to marklamb.us, marklamb.us. You can follow the campaign. You donate, whatever, $50, $100, $3,500, whatever you feel so comfortable with. So.
Not a problem at all. You beat me to the punch here, because we'll support you on that.
Thank you.
If you want to find out more about Sheriff Mark Lamb, retired, he is all over social media. I was shocked at your numbers. So I just want to throw some things out there. You have a different podcast called Mark Lamb, American Sheriff, right? Yeah.
So what I was doing was a podcast called American Sheriff. And then I think it's hard to do a podcast. It's hard to do a podcast. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do the true crime and the body cam review. And then my family and I are also looking at buying a ranch, and we're probably going to do a homesteading channel as well. Just showcasing going back to the roots and raising your own food and raising kids in that atmosphere where they learn how to work. So that's kind of our goals this year. But the true crime will, by the time people see this, go check it out at Atlam Investigations. I've kind of gotten away from the podcast just because it's so hard to get guests, and then they fail you like I failed you the other day.
No.
And so, yeah, it's it's tough. And then I have something called 107, which is it's at 107.com, 107consulting.com. No, go 107.com and at 107consulting.com. What it is we help law enforcement and first responders transition from service to their country to getting into the business world. We teach them about business. As a matter of fact, my last book I wrote was called 107, When Your Shift Ends and Your Life Begins. And so we're helping people get into that. On Instagram, it's at American Sheriff. On Facebook, it's Sheriff Lamb. On YouTube or on X, it's Sheriff Lamb 1. And where I really do a lot of stuff right now is on YouTube, and that's the body cam review is at Real American Sheriff. And then my true crime will be at Lamb Investigations. And then I'll keep you posted on my channels when we get that homesteading stuff going. So I'm trying to do a lot, Steve. I'm trying to take a bite
That's
out
exciting.
of life.
You know, people ask me all the time, because I'm getting to be an old man here, and they say, when are you going to retire? Man, life's an adventure.
Yeah.
I don't want to lay around here all the time. And I'm sure my wife doesn't want me to lay around here all the time and interfere with what she's doing. She would like me to be home a little bit more often. I'm trying to do a little better job with that, but it's an adventure. Take advantage of what's available out there. You also on LinkedIn, you can find him at Sheriff Mark Lamb, retired. And I think, I actually found you on TikTok also at Sheriff Lamb.
Yeah. I didn't do TikTok when I was sheriff because it was against our policy in the county. I wished I would have, because I'd have a huge TikTok following. I'd probably be over the millions, but out of respect, I didn't want to be a hypocrite and say, hey, we don't do it at the sheriff's office, but I'll do it personally. And so I didn't do it. And also I didn't like the Chinese aspect, even though the Chinese are deep embedded all over the place anyway. And then Truth Social, also, you can go to American Sheriff.
There you go. As far as his books, he mentioned a couple. This first, I think you said, was American Sheriff, Traditional Values in a Modern World. You can find that on Amazon. Another book is 107, When Your Shift Ends and Your Life Begins. And I found a third book, American Sheriff, Rules to Live By.
Yep, Rules to Live By was book number 2. And I wrote that. My first book I wrote because we went through some trouble as a family, and my wife and I wrote books so that we could help pay for my son's legal expenses. And so that's what we did. And then the second one is Rules to Live By. It's based on the poem by Rudyard Kipling, If. And I tell stories of hope and courage and determination. If you haven't read the poem, it's one of my favorite poems. And it's really cool. And I wrote that book. And then 107 obviously is to help law enforcement and first responders, military veterans, help them transition into the business world.
Very good. And you can find all those on Amazon, but also there's one more. And regular listeners here, I refer to our families as the unsung heroes, because they give us, whether we're military, first responder, law enforcement, whatever, they give us the opportunity and the ability to go out and do what we think is important in life. And we expect them to take care of everything at home. So I want to give a shout out also to your wife, Janelle Lamb, because she's written a book called The Sheriff's Wife. She's written 2.
Yeah, she's got The Sheriff's Wife's holding it all together behind the scenes in politics, and her book is way better than mine. And then the second one was called Bravery and Blinders. She actually wrote that book. The reason why you don't know a lot about it is we wrote that book and she published it probably less than a week before our kids were killed. And so we never really, it went out, and honestly, at that time, it was the last thing we were thinking about. And it's a great book, but the book was just kind of got lost in all of the grief and the life-changing, altering experience we had. And so, but she does have a second book that went out, I think the week that we lost our kids.
Sorry to hear that, but I mean, big shout out to Janelle for being there for this man, for raising your family, for doing the right thing, and then being brave enough and transparent enough to put it in writing. When a few years ago, I had a co-host here on Game of Crimes. He and I, Morgan Wright, we started this channel almost 5 years ago, and the listeners kept wanting my wife to come on the show. So eventually, I talked her into it. It took months to get her to come on, and I even had listeners writing in on different social medias, asking her to tell her story. And so she did. And I was expected to sit there and just shut up and listen. Man, we got about an hour interview out of her. And then a couple of weeks goes by, and she came back to him and she said, I've been thinking about this. I got more I want to say. So we had to go back and do a second episode to go along with it. So
That's
like
great.
you said before, be careful what you ask for, right?
That's right. That's right.
Mark, brother, it has been a true honor, first of all, to meet you. Thank you so much. That was what happened the other day was just a technical issue, and neither one of us are really tech guys. So it's just things that happen. I call it Murphy's Law because anything can go wrong is going to go wrong. But an honor to have you on here. Thank you for your service to the citizens of Arizona, for everything that you've done, for being responsible and taking care of your family. We all have issues that we deal with, and life's not perfect. That's just part of life, though. And thank you for continuing to be willing to step up and take the problems on head on and see if we can make our country a little bit better than what it is. Because I've said it before, I've already said it a couple times in this interview, we cannot continue to do the same thing and expect a difference, expect a different thing to happen. There's got to be some change. You're a true American patriot and a true American hero in my book, brother.
Thank you. That means a lot. That is the highest praise, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. So everybody, thank you. We couldn't do any of this without your continued support. You can find us anywhere you can listen to audio podcasts. You'll find Game of Crimes. Now we're on YouTube. Come over and check out our Patreon channel just to see what kind of fun we're having over there. And we're talking about serious issues. And as a matter of fact, talking about Venezuela, what's going on down there, just about a week ago, another podcaster, Patrick O'Donnell, who runs Cops and Writers, hosted a interview panel with myself, with Chris Feistel, who was one of the lead DE agents that took down the Cali cartel and the Rodriguez-Oruela brothers, and Wes Tabor, who was a retired DE agent who was stationed in Venezuela back during the Chavez administration down there, who brings unbelievable enlightenment to what really goes on down there. Patrick has agreed to give me a copy of that show, and I'm going to post that on Patreon in case you haven't seen it on his show. If you want to watch the video, go over to Cops and Writers, watch that episode. It's the second time we've done that with Patrick. And you're probably going to hear some things that you won't hear anywhere else on that, okay? So here we are at the end. I say this every week. I don't know why you folks continue to come back, but honestly, I do. And we talked about it because you love these cop shows. You enjoy playing the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all, and that's our Game of Crimes. God bless you all. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next week.